Hey YouTubers, and welcome back to Tony the Technician channel, and today we're going to be doing the Wilwood brake calipers on my 85 Camaro. So they are the D154 style, so the OE style replacement, and yes, you can get this in dual piston setup or single. The dual pistons are actually so small in diameter, they actually cover less surface area than the single piston. So I actually ended up going with the single piston. And I ordered the kit for this car. So part number 140-12097. And that's going to include the calipers and brake pads and everything. And then I also went ahead and ordered the steel braided brake lines for it as well. One side will be a banjo fitting for the caliper side, and the other side will be, 85 is when they switched over to metric. So anything before that, I believe it's SAE, but for mine, it will be a metric style for the chassis side of the brake line. And then it will also supply you with the crush washers for the banjo fitting and all of that, as well as these locking pins to lock the new brake line in position. So I still have the old brake caliper hanging here. I have the other side right here. I still have this one connected because I don't want to undo the brake line yet until I have everything mounted and ready, and to switch quickly over to the new brake line so I don't lose a whole bunch of brake fluid. Other than that, I can tell you one thing. This thing is ridiculously heavy compared to the Wilwood aluminum. I mean, it's got to be close to half the weight of the OE caliper. So you're actually losing a lot of that unsprung weight, which is going to create a better ride quality, and everything like that with less unsprung weight. So with the kit, you're going to get the Wilwood caliper. The single piston, as you can see here. This will be where the banjo fitting goes, and it doesn't matter which one you put on each side because it has a bleeder valve on top and bottom. So this one will go just like this, and with it being the D154 style, there's no modification to the spindle or anything like that. This is a direct bolt-in replacement to your OE. And then it will also come with your slide pin bolts as well, which you will need some white lithium grease or your brake assembly grease and stuff like that to make sure your pins are lubricated. Here is the banjo bolt and the two crush sleeves and all that. And as you can tell, I already have the caliper off. It is very easy to remove. It's those two slide pin bolts that I just showed you. They're 3/8, I believe. It fits very, very tight. Tried a 10, a 9. It's an Allen head, and they are very tight with the fitting. And I've tried 4 different brands of Allen sockets, and they all fit extremely snug. Luckily, these only get torqued to 35 foot-pounds, and with this Wilwood kit, you will get instructions if you need more information on how to assemble it and everything. But you'll lubricate the slide pin bolts after you do that. You can place the caliper on there, torque these to 35 foot-pounds, and then after that, it's basically just going to be getting that new brake line hooked up without losing a whole lot of fluid, and that's why I have this drain pan down here. You guys can see all of that. So other than that, the banjo bolt fitting will get torqued to anywhere from 96 to 120 inch-pounds and no more than 144 inch-pounds. You're basically just supposed to torque it until it stops leaking fluid, and then you're good. So it's very simple, very easy. If you guys haven't checked out the video of replacing the rotors on this car, which I just released not too long ago before this video, where I actually show removing the caliper, installing bearings and seals on the new rotors and everything, and all new hardware and all that. So now we're moving into the calipers. So if you need to see how to do any of that, there is a video on that on my channel, so go ahead and check that out. If not, we're going to get right into this, and we're going to start by lubricating all of the hardware. So you will take your two slide pin bolts, and you will take these fittings, which will slide right in here. You see there's a little rubber O-ring in here, and after you grease this with white lithium grease or your brake caliper grease, it's going to slide right in that hole, and that is what the slide pin is going to go through. Do not put white lithium grease or anything on the threads of the actual bolt. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and we'll get it mounted up. Okay, so now that I got these little basically brass bushings in here lubricated, same thing with the slide pin bolts, you're going to, since it's the stock D154 style, you're simply going to place it on, no modification necessary, nothing like that. So you'll take your brake pads that are supplied with the kit, part number 150-8936K, the outer brake pad, the one without the piston. You got two 90-degree bends on this side, which are going to fall right inside of these holes to keep it aligned, and then you're going to have a 90-degree bend here on the top, which sits right on that plate, just like that. As far as the inner brake pad, it's going to simply rest in place. It's got two tangs to go on the outside right there, and when the slide pin bolt goes through, it will actually hold the brake pad in place from sliding anywhere. So then you simply take your caliper, you place it in, then you take your slide pin bolt from the back, slide it through, maybe get a couple threads started, take the bottom one, and do the exact same thing. It's going to slide through the cutouts in the brake pad to hold it there in place, and it's simple as that. Now, it's as easy as taking your torque wrench and your 3/8 or whatever Allen socket you can get that fits the best, and torquing these to the 35 foot-pounds. So I'm going to go ahead and get this all tightened up. And that's just to where they're snug. Now I have my torque wrench set at 35 foot-pounds, and we'll go ahead and torque these to the 35 foot-pounds. Not a whole lot of room in here to work with. There's the 35 on the top bolt. .35 on the bottom. Just going to come back and double check them. Alright. So the caliper's installed. Simple as that. It's literally those two bolts in the stock spindle mount and everything. So basically now what we're going to do is we're going to keep this brake caliper out of the way as much as possible. And here is where you will install the banjo fitting. So basically this bolt here has a hole in it and in the end, and with this the brake fluid will come through this fitting, and with these crush washers on here, one on that side, one on this side, brake fluid will come in, go through the banjo fitting into the banjo bolt and into the brake caliper here through the hole in the end of the bolt. Lost my crush washers in my bolt. Now the key is to finding the best way to route your brake lines. What I'm going to do now actually is remove these clips, and it's going to be either you can take a screwdriver and hit it back, or pliers and pull it back. I'm going to go ahead and just use a punch and some pliers and get this thing pulled off, and then we'll get to installing the new brake line. Instead of removing the clip that was mounted here, I removed the entire bracket, which you can see here. It's a 13mm bolt that goes through. I actually don't need that because my new brake line will be routed straight up, mounted here, and then comes down and mounts to the chassis side hard line, because I will be using this to mount it here and keep it up out of the way. I tried it on the other side with that bracket and it just wasn't aligning very well, and the brake line itself doesn't have any fittings to actually hold it to that bracket. So this is the best way I could come up with something to keep the brake line out of the way and routed correctly without any sharp bends or anything like that. So now that we have that out of the way, we're actually going to install the banjo fitting, and I have actually tightened the banjo fitting onto the brake line, but this side I have left loose because this is the side that goes to the body, and if you tighten it up, then you can't actually rotate it, and I'm gonna need to be able to adjust the line without kinking it and everything. So I'm just gonna leave this loose so it can rotate freely. So right now we're just gonna focus on getting the banjo bolt started, and you're gonna remove basically the sticker or whatever you want to call it over the hole on the back side, and that's an M10 by 1.5 to go like that. It's already kind of shaped like that, so I want to keep that same kind of direction. So there we go. It's installed into the caliper, and remember that's going to get torqued to 96 to 120 inch-pounds and no more than 144. And then we will mount the brake line here and have it connected here. But before I go mounting it or anything like that, I'm actually going to get this one removed and the other one installed quickly so I don't lose any or too much brake fluid. Okay, so the bottom hard line or the brake line, the hard line, is going to be a 12, depending on your vehicle most likely, and a 16 for the top portion, and you're just going to simply break it loose. And you want to try and do this as quickly as possible so you don't lose a whole lot of brake fluid. Just put my finger over the end of it, and then you take your new fitting, put it through the hole, and start snugging it up. Try and do this as quickly as possible so you're not losing a whole lot of fluid. Tighten up both sides, the hard line to the larger fitting and your fitting to the actual steel braided brake line. And then you're going to come back, tighten it all up. Okay, now we've got that snugged up from the hard line to the larger fitting. Now we need to actually come in and tighten up the larger fitting to the brake line so it doesn't leak, and we can kind of get this routed exactly how we want. This bracket is actually bent, so I might try bending this back in place. Try and give my line a better routing. Might mount it something like that, but we'll get to that. And you want to keep an eye on your brake fluid reservoir as well. Now I'm going to take my A and wrench, just going to go ahead and snug that up. Then I'm going to come back through with a little bit of brake clean on a rag. I'm going to clean all this brake fluid off just to make sure that we're not leaking any more fluid and everything is sealed up correctly. Then you want to take your 1/4-inch torque wrench. I have mine set to 120 inch-pounds. Make sure you're doing this in inch-pounds. You'll destroy it if you're doing foot-pounds. So come on to the banjo bolt fitting. Back it off so I can make some adjustments to the brake line. And there's the 120 inch-pounds. And then you want to keep an eye on the banjo bolt fitting, make sure it isn't leaking any fluid. If it does, slightly bump up your torque wrench setting, but not to exceed 144 inch-pounds, and just until it stops leaking. And that's as simple as installing the Wilwood D154 brake caliper, brakes, and flex line. And as simple as that. The next step will be to brake clean everything off, make sure it's not leaking, and then go ahead and mount this in a location that seems to work best, somewhere that it's not rubbing on anything and it's free of kinks and stuff when turning the wheel. So keep that in mind, and I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to hit that thumbs up, leave a comment down below of your thoughts or any other tips and tricks that you might have, and as always, if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. But that's it for this side. I'll do the final touch-ups, and I'll show you the other side. Engine bay is a little bit of a mess right now. I should have done this side last for you guys. It would have been a little bit easier for me to work over here with more open space. But that's how it turned out. Banjo bolt fitting in the back. Mounted here. Very clean. So please let me know your guys' thoughts, and I really hope you guys enjoyed.